Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is your host, Warisa Zainab. And in today's episode of Agahi, inshallah, we will be talking about the challenges that people with mental disability face when it comes to integrating in the society. As we all know that stereotyping, stigma, and discrimination are challenges that people with disability, whether it's physical or mental, they face every day. And much of the disabled community faces exclusion from parts of the society that other people often take for granted. Once again, in today's episode, we have inshallah, we'll be inviting Sister Umm-e-Laila, who will be joining us from Pakistan. Umm-e-Laila is an occupational therapist and has a lot of experience working with people from diverse backgrounds and with different kinds of mental health issues. Umm-e-Laila, thank you so much for taking the time out. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. Jazakallah Zainab for having me. I hope you are doing well, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. I hope you're staying safe as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Inshallah, khair. So this is a very important topic, Umm-e-Laila, and we know that in many societies across the world, whether it's countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, or many parts of the Middle East, when it comes to people with disability, whether it's mental or physical, we know that when it comes to finding a job, when it comes to finding a prominent position in the society, or just simply integrating into it, they face so many challenges on the daily basis. And because of that, lots of people who are talented, who have skills, who are quite intelligent, they are deprived from making a contribution in the society. So first of all, please tell us about the work that you do, so our viewers are aware of the extensive experience that you have in this field.
I'm currently working at Ziauddin University as a lecturer and as a clinical occupational therapist. And my field of interest is the children of all special abilities and all the diverse backgrounds. Though I do have worked with the adults and the teenagers as well. And mental health is one of those, I think, issues that needs to be dealt with. And also, I have been involved with many individuals on various levels, on various platforms that were suffering from such issues. Not only those who were diagnosed clinically, but also those which people thought that they were quite normal according to them, but they didn't have any underlying issue or anything. So that's it.
The topic that we're going to discuss today around disability, and there are different forms of mental disability. I know in countries like Pakistan, for example, we still don't have the basic facilities. For example, a ramp for people who use wheelchair, or people who are unable to walk. They can't access so many places, which means they are dependent on either the family members, relatives, or friends. But when it comes to mental health, what kind of disabilities exist and are most prevalent amongst children or young people?
Well, I think that mental health is one of those things that are easily ignorable in societies, especially in the Asian societies. People tend to ignore the mental health the most. For instance, if my viewers would agree that if you have an heartache or if you have a headache, you immediately go to the concerned physician. But when you have issues saying your point or conveying what you actually feel regarding any situation, regarding a person, or relating to a job, people find it very difficult, and people tend to ignore what other people might think of them or how harsh they could come off to some people. So I think, when I feel that it is one of the most neglected fields in, if I talk about our society.
Yeah.
So there is a certain group which is clinically, as I mentioned earlier, which is clinically diagnosed with any of the mental disability. For instance, it's depression or anxiety disorder or the post-traumatic stress disorder, so on and so forth. But there are certain individuals who battle such mental anxieties on daily basis, but unfortunately they don't know where to go or whom to tell. and also because they are kind of afraid of the term that they'll be labeled as a maniac or as an idiot or as simply a crackhead. There are certain names the society has given to such people. So they tend to progress, or they tend to show their emotions in abnormal way or in the society which are unacceptable to the society.
Mm.
They may project their emotions onto their spouses, onto their children, or onto the people who are vulnerable to them.
Mm.
They may come off, you may see harsh bosses around you may see harsh parents around you, which do love their children, who do love their family, but they think that their family is the one whom they could project their emotions, so they tend to be harsh with them. Or you could see a certain group of such people falling into the crimes.
Oh, yes.
Mostly when we talk, when we work in the psychiatry department, when I used to work at civil,
Mm.
so most of the people that come, those were the drug rehabilitation department, or of the crime, the ones that were coming to the jail.
Yeah.
Most of them, around I would say 90% of them, say that they were suffering from some childhood trauma or from some childhood abuse or from any underlying issue that sprouted back in their childhood, but it was remained unaccounted for and it progressed into a socially unacceptable behavior, and it resulted into a crime, maybe someone's murder or some stealing or some vandalizing, any of those behaviors. So, a small sprouting, a small, you may say, a leaflet, if you could see, could turn into a big, humongous tree and a humongous problem in the society.
And the medical model, it views disability as a consequence of a health condition, a disease, a illness, or maybe an accident that disrupts that function. But we tend to see that in our communities and certain societies, some parts of the world, people perceive somebody without disability or a condition that prevents them from doing certain activities as this person is not normal, or this person needs to be fixed. Or for example, if it's a child, then people kind of tend to blame the parents that they must have done something wrong, that as a result the child was born with a disability. How can we break this stigma? How can we remove this stereotype from our society, especially in countries like Islamic countries, where we know that everything is decreed by Allah, and as humans, we don't have full control over everything.
Exactly. As you said, that we don't have full control over ourselves. So I think the first and foremost thing is the acceptance. When you accept that things could be a bit different from what you are, people could be a bit different than you are, and the normals that we have fixed in our society, certain individuals can differ from that too. For instance, if you, Alhamdulillah, if a person has all the limbs intact, if he's mentally stable, if he's socially active, it doesn't mean that that's the normal. If you could take it with the Islamic point of view,
Mm-hmm.
Allah has given such blessings to that individual, but it doesn't mean that, God forbid, if there's a physically disabled person, so God forbid, Allah has His curse upon him, or his parents might have committed any sin in their life, so that their child is receiving the punishment of the sin or any instance. So we need to accept that there are certain individuals who are not maybe like us, maybe not physically like us, but they're mentally capable. They do have that potential to shine. They do have their potential if given the right platforms, if given the right opportunities at the right time.
Definitely.
So I think that this acceptance would be inculcated best in the childhood. When the children, when they go out and they see a child on a wheelchair, they come home back, and if they would share it with their parents, so rather than mocking the child or rather than calling out the names to those to children, the parents should inculcate the accepting behavior. Like the individuals or the children, they should be setting an example as the role models, the parents should be the role model for such children.
Mm.
And once this step is done, this could only lead to giving the confidence, giving the platforms, giving the opportunities for the specially abled, I believe.
Yes. And I think all the barriers that we perceive that exist in the society, it's all up here, because if we want, we can accommodate them. If you
Yeah.
look at the West, for example, they have made things so much accessible for people with mental or physical disabilities, whether it's going to school, college, university, finding a job at the workplace. People, they have designed things so that they can also make a contribution in society. They can also actively participate in everything that people with ability can. So, in terms of mental health, we know that certain mental health conditions, for example, severe depression, chronic anxiety, they can limit a person from living a normal life. But what about people with, say, for example, mental disability? What options do they have, and what kind of mental disabilities prevent people from living a normal life despite support?
I think that there are certain issues that a person, for instance, there are certain things that a person cannot openly share with their spouses or with their parents. There are certain problems that a person faces. There may be any work related issue, or if you could see after the pandemic, the financial stresses that has been upon the individuals are they are numerous. Like for the economic issues, the economic means the individual level issues because of the falling economy. Like in Pakistan, during the COVID time, numerous people lost their jobs.
Yes.
So what happens is that this increases the anxiety. Already the people of, especially the middle class people who do not have access to a freedom of choices, they cannot choose freely when it comes to their jobs. They cannot have a good source of education for their children because the education is quite expensive here. Sorry to say, but it is quite inaccessible for a middle class person to have their child enrolled in the mainstream school, the cream schools of the city or of the country.
Yeah.
So I think this creates an extensive burden on people. Or even if the individual graduates from a good university with a good degree, but the problem is the availability of the jobs or of the opportunities. Unfortunately, I would like to share a few days back, you must have heard in the news that a young individual committed suicide in one of the famous malls here in Karachi.
Yeah.
So when we got to know of the story, we got to know that he had a good degree from a good institute,
Mm.
and he had a loving family.
Yeah.
So the question arises that he had a good family, number one. He had supportive siblings, number two. He had a good degree. So what made that individual fell off and commit and take his life?
Exactly.
What were the precursors? He was not termed as a mentally disabled person. He was quite normal. He wasn't a part of the society, a happy part of the society, or as the people thought he was happy, but he took his life. So that was quite unfortunate. And I think that it's high time that we need to focus on the issues, on such issues. And I think that the availability of resources and the equitable distribution of resources, whether they are financial resources, whether they are educational resources, or they are other socioeconomic resources
Mm.
that an individual needs to have. And even if he's not having those resources, there should be certain individuals, certain people
Mm.
nominated from the society, and if I could say the therapist,
Yes.
that the person could go to, that the person could talk to. I think that this would help a lot.
Do you see any positive change um, in terms of accepting people or accommodating people with disabilities? For example, have you seen an increase in schools that are like established for children with special needs? For example, children who are visually impaired or deaf or unable to walk, for example?
Yes, Alhamdulillah, within the span of last 5 years, Alhamdulillah, there are certain schools that are working with individuals with special needs. Like for instance, Dowd Public School, if I would name, they
Mm,
have started an inclusive setup. They do have a mainstream school, but they
okay.
have started an inclusive setup. So much so that they'll be providing education with the mainstream education to specially abled children,
Mm,
and side by side within their school premises they do have the physical therapy, the occupational therapy, the speech therapy clinics that the child could go to. So the child could have sensory breaks or the physical breaks in between, and
mm,
the child could go to the therapist, the concerned therapist for his concerned need, and then he could join back to the class. So I think that is one of the good things. And if you could talk about on a more younger adults level, so KFC, I would like to know, quote, has started employing individuals with speech impairments, with hearing
mashallah.
problems. Yes, Alhamdulillah. So they are hiring their staff and they have labeled their branches. So the entire staff of the entire branch is specially able. So that is quite good, Alhamdulillah. And even at some malls, they are having security guards and representatives with some or the other special ability, either it's a visual impairment or a hearing impairment or a speech impairment.
Mm.
So I think that is a quite positive change that we are observing here in the society. So I think we are off to some good, inshallah.
But you know,
And I
all
think
these institutions, for example, schools or college or university, they're all private. So people who are able to financially afford sending their children or teenagers or, to these institutions can afford it. But what about those parents, those families who are not in a financial position to afford private education? Does that mean their children go without education just because government schools don't provide those facilities, for example a ramp or braille system and all that?
that is a thing that needs to be worked out.
Mm,
Uh, uh, the province in which I live and our neighboring province as well, they have started working on the government level, that they have passed on the constitutions, they
mhm,
have passed on the bills and on the inclusion of such individuals, that they have this, and recently in Pakistan, if I would say, the national curriculum is being designed so much so that there should be a uniform curriculum for all of the individuals, whether they are specially abled or not, or the typical children,
mm,
that they will study from the same curriculum,
yeah.
and that will be implied for both private and government schools. So I think that initiative would promote the right to good education, which is a born right, which is a human right, a universal right for all individuals. So I think that will be a more practical approach coming to this.
Mhm.
And even if the student passes his matriculation, the real problem arises after that. Like, this education has been provided to the student, but what will he do after his intermediate or after his studies?
Mm.
So I think that, and we have been working on that too, the vocational training centers that train the children or that train the individuals or the teenagers with any special skills, so, or any special art or any special craft, so that they become financially independent. Because I think that the problem starts when a person becomes a financial burden upon his family. Already the economic crisis is going on, especially in the Asian or the Central Asian countries. So the main
Trust
issue
me, it's
comes.
here. It's here as well. It's something which is global
Oh,
now. I mean, I'm sure you're aware. It's something which is going across the world. People losing their jobs and businesses, and the economy is crashing down. So it's something which you can say it's a shared experience for most people, especially from the middle class, because they are the ones who struggle the most, right?
yes. So I think that that is what needs to be done, or the awareness that needs to be given to the people at the right time. That if they could financially be independent, if they could be, and or if not independent, at least they could contribute to some of their expenses. So I think there will be a little less burden on the families. so there'll be acceptance of those individuals in their family. Because what we used to observe around 10 years back or 12 years back, that especially the ones that were the physically challenged individuals, they would be just lying on those charpais, and there wouldn't be any productivity related to those individuals, and people would just say that okay, this individual has this condition and nothing can be done, no rehabilitation needs to be done with this individual, or nothing, no money should be invested upon the healthcare
Yes.
and the wellness of this individual. But
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, we are slowly, as unfortunately, but still, we are going to some path, and the government is, Alhamdulillah, providing slowly the opportunities, whether they are the job opportunities or whether they are the educational opportunities. One of the institutions, if I would mention, here in Karachi, so they have been training a set of individuals for the last 5 years, and now they have successfully completed the design training, and they have hired those individuals. So they have been hired on government merit basis, and they have government jobs now, alhamdulillah. So I think that is a good step, and they'll be a source of motivation for other individuals as well. That if they could prove in, or they could pitch in with all the efforts and with all the right steps, I would say, and with the support of obviously their families and especially the society. So I think they'll achieve much more success than they
Inshallah.
are now.
Let's hope
Inshallah.
so. Yeah. But I think our mindset needs to be changed as well. We need to kind of shift our perceptions when it comes to people with special needs or people with any form of disability, because unless and until there is a change within the mindset of the society at large, nothing can be done at the higher level. So the change needs to come slowly and gradually from the bottom. You mentioned, Umm-e-Laila, about change happening in terms of education at education level, and some private companies are now recruiting people with disabilities as well. But what about social settings or public places? For example, if somebody wants to go to a cafe, something as simple as that, or to go to
Yes.
a mall for shopping. Now, what are the chances? Like, how accessible is that? Like, how many cafes, say, for example, have a ramp, or they have somebody who speaks sign language, for example? You know.
Well, that is a bit, I would say, in progress,
Mhm.
because it's not just the cafes. If a person wants to just go to a public park, they have certain, the railings are situated in such a way that the wheelchair cannot pass, or the person with using crutches cannot pass through. So I think that the work needs to be done on the fundamental level. The parks needs to be accessible, the public banks need to be accessible, the schools need to be accessible. Even only the special schools have such special, I would say, the infrastructure that allows those kind of individuals. The rest, even the malls, even
Mm,
the escalators, the elevators that are there in the malls, they even don't, they are not even inclusive.
yeah.
So as I mentioned, that inclusion is not just for education or for jobs or for availability of resources. Inclusion is just simply thinking about someone else, thinking about outside the box, that
Yeah.
if I could pass through this door,
Mm,
so every individual has the right to pass through this door without asking the help of any other, or without having someone to lift and to support him towards that area. So, and it's so much so that I think that for the the pathways, the passenger walk. You must know that here we don't promote the footpath culture. We don't usually have the footpaths. It's usually occupied, but it
mm,
would really help if you would have certain demarcations or certain signs that would help guide the sensory of the person having sensory issues such as the visual impairment. We should have such kind of sidewalks that would help a person holding a stick
mm,
maneuver his way through the marketplace, or they should have some certain highlighted signs the cat eyes, especially for the hearing disabled person, that he should know that there's a car approaching from the other hallway. So there are such little things that people often tend to ignore, but they would mean the world to the person having a special ability
Yeah.
if we could think about certain such things. Or even in banks,
It's
there
like
are no questions.
in order to
Mhm.
minimize dependency on other people, for example, family members or neighbors or what have you, in order to minimize that, you have to make everything more accessible and accommodating for people with special needs. Whether
Yes.
it's the roads or the footpaths or um, places like you suggested, like banks and,
Exactly.
yeah,
So the goal is, or I think the goal should be, to make life a little less hassle-free for the people who are physically and mentally challenged both. Because such things only promote or result into the increasing mental anxiety. And even if the person was initially trying to achieve something in life, he would be just demotivated, and he would be, not motivated enough to continue on with what he was initially doing. So we don't want, and we should not have the individual lose their purpose of life. If they want to accomplish something, it
yeah,
doesn't matter that they're on a wheelchair. It doesn't matter that they're holding a crutch or a stick. It
mm,
doesn't matter if they cannot hear. We should promote that every one of us should know the sign language. It Since they can read from our lips what we are trying to say, so we should be capable enough of talking to them. There is on the topic I would mention, there is a certain member of the society. Her parents are especially able. They cannot listen and they cannot talk. So she has started this platform in which she connects the individual with such abilities, and she provides the internship opportunities. That she have seminars which are especially in these languages and sign languages, and she has been giving free demonstrations, and now she has started giving out courses, 3 months courses of sign language. And she thinks that every individual should have this quality of talking out of the box rather than talking in English or in Urdu. They should have a third language which would be not specifically concerned with articulation of words. So I think when we take the specially abled as a person, or we rather than being sympathetic, we if we become empathetic, if we try to put ourselves into their shoes, I think that is when we will be more accepting, and we would be realizing the issues or the problems that they're facing, and hence making ourselves much more productive and much more accessible to them, I
definitely.
think.
So, like everyone can play their part in educating themselves and also educating themselves about these barriers and learn how to create new pathways to ensure that our society is accessible and inclusive as much as possible. But for that, we need to remove the attitudinal barriers so that we can remove the barriers from the society. And in regards to, you know, family support system, some people are fortunate that they have a very supportive family environment, they have friends, but then you also see cases where the family is not supportive or they are unable to provide that kind of support. That leaves individual with not much choices in life. So basically they are bedbound, they cannot go outside at all, they can't educate themselves, they're either dependent on aid, charity, or they are forced to just beg on the streets, or they are exploited by those who are, for example, more, powerful and in a position where they can easily exploit these children or young people. Is there anything that's being done in this area?
It is, as I said, that on a slower pace, but the government representatives are working on creating such platforms. You could say there are certain mobile platforms that are being made, that allow the persons, the special needs person, to launch their complaints or to mention or if there is any wrong being done with them. And apart from them, recently there was an hiring among the I think, if I'm sure, the police department hired a specially abled individual. I
Yeah.
would share much details with you later on, but I think that is this stage that such people need representations, not
Yes.
just on a job level, but on a governmental level, on law enforcement levels, or on the political backgrounds, because we don't see any political representation of a special needs person, because I think that the person going through those issues can only vouch for the rest of the persons.
Of course.
And normal individual cannot understand the intensity of those issues when it comes, or the intensity of to what extent the problem might be a hassle for them, as compared to a person already going through those challenges. So I think that the what needs to be done is that they need to speak about what they are having, what issues they are facing, rather than we being representatives for them.
So there
So I
isn't
think,
is there a helpline? Is there a platform where people who are less able can seek help and support if they are being exploited or harassed or abused or deprived of their basic rights? Is there any place where they can seek help?
yeah, the government bodies here working here, they have launched a helpline. It is the mobile app is being in process, but they have launched the helpline in which you can call, and the law enforcement agencies or the representatives of the government would come to your houses at that very moment, and would help you uh, in relieving your situation or with ever problem that you're facing. So we
Okay.
do, Alhamdulillah, have that helpline that kind of helps people. But again, what the problem again, a barrier that comes in between is that most of the individuals don't know that there is such an existing helpline,
Mm,
or there is a certain platform that they could refer to, refer their beloved, or they could refer themselves
yeah.
for any issue that they're facing. So I think that with the technology, the, the evolving technology in this era, I think that the special able persons should also know that what advancements are being done in
Mm,
this technologies, and it's just not about Facebook and WhatsApp now. It's much more, and we know that there's a chance that there's a parallel universe working right with us and living with us. So I think they should be more aware of where the world is leading to, where the world is heading to, and they should upgrade themselves.
mm,
And this could only be done if they're more connected
yeah.
on social platforms or on social groups. There are certain Facebook support groups,
Mm,
and I think that is a very good initiative.
yeah.
They have been running. I personally know them, and I also am a part of those groups. They have been running for around, I think, 1 or 2 years. And over there, the parents or the individual themselves, they share their success stories, their emotional journeys that they have covered,
Mm,
whether they were emotionally disabled, or they were mentally challenged, or they were physically disabled.
yeah.
So they are being a source of motivation for the children, or for the parents, or for the individuals that were suffering from any kind of those issues. So
Mm,
I think that is quite beneficial,
yeah.
because rather than us, the therapists,
Mm,
it's better that an individual with the same issue could communicate and be a source of motivation for other individuals of his kind, or for of his condition, I think.
definitely. Umm-e-Laila, you spoke about the societal barriers that exist today. You also mentioned the attitudinal barriers that exist. What about the systemic barriers like the laws, regulations, policies, practices, or strategies that are designed by the government or organizations that discriminate against people with disabilities? I mean, Unfortunately, we know that there are discriminatory laws and policies, and it's not easy for us, people like us, to change them, even if we put immense pressure on advocacy groups. So, was there any hope? Is there anything that can be done? Like, for example, occupational therapists and people who are in the field of law to come together and maybe, you know, start a petition or something?
Yeah, exactly. Recently, the International Day of Disability just went by in the starting week of December. So we had a seminar at our university. We held a seminar and we called the Faculty of Law for to
Healthy.
have a discussion for students. So that was quite a fruitful session because we presented the same notion that what needs to be done on the lawmaking bodies on the law level, that because the change will come when it is in a proper direction, when it is flowing from a proper direction, from the correct hierarchy will follow. So we asked them that is there any platform or any certain criteria that we will fulfill for you people, and then you become a source of benefit for certain individuals.
Mm.
So if I would tell you, here in our society, it was a norm, a quite a norm for a couple of decades,
Yeah.
that the person with special disability, especially the physical disability, they used to prove themselves that they are physically
Mm.
disabled. I think there's no bigger dilemma than this, that a person already suffering from a physical condition has to prove in the court that they are physically disabled, and then they'll be issued that special license. And apart from that, the CNIC I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
the CNICs now also only issue those who have a physical disability. There is no CNIC, or there is no representation of the person with a mental challenge, a mental disability, or a sensory issue, or a speech impairment, or any such thing.
Mm.
So we asked the faculty, he himself was a lawyer, to work in this regard. So he said that the people, they do not come forward. So, but again, the people would not come forward because they are being left hopeless at the end.
Yeah.
So we decided that uh, through a general consensus, or through a general, a survey, a cross-sectional survey, we would nominate certain individuals
Yeah.
that have certain special abilities apart from the physical disability, and we would connect them to that uh, representative of law,
Yeah.
and we would ask them to provide those individuals the rights or the representation that needs to be given, and through a special any card or any any identity or any of such sort. And in return, those individuals then will further be, you could say, a source, or they would further spread our message that this needs to be done.
Yeah.
So then again, I would say that there needs to be a bridge between
Yes,
these
definitely.
individuals and the therapist and the law enforcement or the government representatives
Mm.
between. So the lacking is actually the bridge that connects the three of them, because we
Okay.
know such people and we know the law enforcement agencies. The law enforcement agency knows us, but they do not know the individuals.
Mm.
So I think there is a bridge that needs to be made within these individuals, so that they could be directly linked to the official, rather than coming to us, going to the physician in the first place, and then the physician referring to us, then you're referring to another individual. So it becomes a very long process, and also a very tiring and a demotivating process. So
Of course, yeah.
certain individuals tend to skip it out.
And I
So there's a direct connection that needs to be made.
it's off-putting as well for a lot of people, because when they go through that system and all they get is disappointment and rejection, then I think it's quite daunting for them, and then they kind of give up on the whole thing, and they feel there's no help and there's no support and nothing can be done, so they kind of just, you know, leave everything. And you gave like a really good example that why can't we learn sign language, for example? We learned so many other languages, right? Why can't we introduce sign language in our curriculum, for example? Because just because someone does not communicate in the same way you do does not mean that they should be left out of the conversation. And we see in so many countries across the world that even for something as basic as Jummah khutbah in the mosque, they have somebody who is speaking in sign language so that people who are visually impaired or auditory impaired, they can understand what lecture is being given. And this is something really basic. You know, there's a mosque around the corner everywhere. But it's a shame that we deprive people of learning the basics about their faith, or basic education, just because there is a communication barrier.
Exactly. So, like you said, that so much so, even at the masjids or at the community parks or at certain places, such public places especially, or even in the marriage halls, if firstly the people with special abilities tend to ignore or tend to be aloof at such gatherings, they don't usually attend such weddings, and even if they do, so they are a source of mockery, or they are a source of judgment for the entire society, that, oh, look, he's still at this condition. Oh, look, he has been to therapies, but there's no such clue, or there's no such clue of improvement. Or they could be that, why waste such time or money, or even if you could go to some Baba or some Peer who
Oh,
would give you,
yes. That
those
further aggravates the symptoms.
Exactly. Our society love to promote what I say, the Tavi's culture, that there is solution for every problem. Even if you're having a flu, there could be a Tavi's for that. I'll say that because it's
They
quite
blame
common.
everything on supernatural stuff.
Exactly. We blame everything, that even if we are having dizziness, so it may be because there's some supernatural entity that wants to be seen. So we're just having a dizziness, or any, the vertigo. So we're just having it because there's some entity who wants to play with us or any such thing. So I think that even we confuse Allah Ta'ala's sayings, and we confuse the teachings of Quran
Yes.
with the mental illnesses. Quran is definitely a comprehensive guide, a comprehensive solution for all the problems, but it needs to be, I think, handed by the right people.
Yeah.
That is very important. The Quranic sayings shouldn't be handed over by any random individual, or any individual who don't even know the depths of those ayats, or as you know, there's a backstory behind every ayat, and
Oh, yes.
not just one. There are multiple backstories when it comes to Quran. There could be hundreds and thousands of meaning of the same verse, and it could be contemplated in various forms.
Mm.
So even if we do take help from Quran, we should, I think, take the measures that are vital, or that are obligatory, apart from those sayings, apart from those verses, or especially do not go to such individuals who claim that they are representatives of Quran, and then they fool you around,
Mm.
or they just fool you around for the money that you have, and they waste the precious time that could be invested into any intervention for that individual, or any such solution that could be done for certain individual. Because when Allah Ta'ala has given a condition to an individual, Allah Ta'ala has the solution for it too. But it is our responsibility to look for that solution.
Definitely.
We can't just in our homes and then pray that, some angel would come up with the solution. It's us that we need to look for the solution by ourselves. If we
Yeah,
want to be, if we want to seek the remedy, so we should be, moving for the remedy. The remedy won't just pop and come to us.
of course.
So I think that needs to be done.
No, that's a very good point that you mentioned. I can't agree more. And the irony is that some people who appear to be very religious and well versed in Quranic interpretation, they often, you see that they are the first ones who mock or make fun or stigmatize people with mental health conditions. Although, if you look at the stories mentioned in the Quran, There are numerous examples, even in the ahadith, that, for example, Hazrat Bilal, salam, he was the companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and despite having speech difficulty, the Prophet of Allah did not shun him from the society. In fact, he gave him the role and responsibility of reciting the call to prayer.
Yeah.
He became the first muezzin. And this is such a beautiful example that just because someone has a different ability doesn't mean you should, remove them from the society. But this is a beautiful example of how to be inclusive, how to include
Yes.
them. And
So I couldn't agree more with your point as well, because Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he set the first example of inclusion, and when we agree on this notion that whatever he did was Allah's will, and he didn't do a single thing which was not obliged to him from Allah, so we should accept the fact that Allah wants us to be more beneficial to such people. And I think it's a test for us if we could just stick it to the religious point, like some individuals tend to, that it's our spiritual and it's our responsibility towards Allah and towards the Prophet and his sayings, that to be more inviting of such individuals, to be more accepting of such individuals, and it would not only be good for them, but it would be good for us spiritually. I feel, and what I have personally experienced, that when I get involved with such individuals, after coming home or just being on the way, I become even more thankful to Allah that Allah has blessed me with good mental health. Allah has blessed me with the ability to be a source of help for such individuals. So that feeling, I think, it is very beautiful and it couldn't be explained in words.
yeah,
So I think if we would focus more on
yeah,
this belief that uh, being a Muslim, and if not being a Muslim, the message of humanity is preached by every religion of the world.
yes,
Every religion preaches humanity and peace and
compassion.
harmony in the society. So, being a member of any religion, it is our social responsibility to be more accepting, to be more inviting of such individuals, and definitely whoever the god is of those religions, and I personally know by heart of my religion, that Allah will definitely bestow us with our mercy and with his bounties and with his blessings. So I think that if not just for the societal pressure, we
Mm.
could just do it for our spiritual well-being and for our mental health even.
Would you would you say that faith leaders, regardless of what religion they belong to, whether Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, do you think faith leaders play a crucial role in changing the mindsets of the people in terms of inclusion and to make changes within their thought process so that they can, you know, treat people with different forms of mental health conditions or disabilities, treat them equally with respect, with compassion, with kindness and mercy, instead of stigmatizing them, degrading them, humiliating them, calling them names, or going as far as throwing stones at them, which unfortunately still happens in so many parts of the world. I mean, you hear shocking stories and accounts from people how they treat people with mental or physical disability.
Yes, exactly. I think faith or the religious basis play a very vital role, because the religious representatives, people see them as their source of guidance. Unfortunately and fortunately both, in every part of the world, the religious representatives are regarded, whether despite any religion, they are regarded as the epitome of their faith, or they are regarded as the people who have the extreme faith and extreme piousness and extreme good character and stuff. So I think those representatives, when they do not fulfill their responsibility, when they do not promote the inclusion, when they are not forgiving or more humble to such individuals, I think that's where the problem arises, because people think that they are the blessed ones, and only they, the mainstream people, they are the good part of the society, and unfortunately the people with special ability, whether mental or physical or any other sort, they are a burden to the society, and they need to be shunned, they need to be treated, they need to be mistreated and stuff. So, as I mentioned earlier, that every religion, the basis of every religion in the world which is existent at the moment, the basis initially was peace among the society, was harmony among the society. Every religion promoted peace. Unfortunately, there, due to certain, I'm not going into the details, but the religious views have been modified over the time, unfortunately, which is leading to such chaos and such problems and such, I would say, unfortunate events that take place. Is the tolerance when it comes to having to accepting someone who is different from you on any level, that acceptance and that tolerance is decreasing by the time, and due to which the problem arises and the problem takes place. So I think the religious clerics of all the religions that are, and since I belong to Islam, so I would point more the Islamic clerics that they should include inclusion, they should include acceptance, they should include harmony and forgiveness at every level, at every possible level, whether it is a namaz time that the people have come for prayers, whether it should be included in the Friday khutbahs, or whether it should be included in the milads that take place, or in other religious gatherings. There are numerous gatherings that take place throughout the year. So I think a little bit of this thought needs to be put in the individual, that you are good, but there are all other people's there are other people who can be better than you, if not physically, definitely mentally. And I think that we have noticed that the people with special abilities, they tend to be much more creative, they tend to be much more productive, they tend to be much more genius. Their IQ levels sometimes they astound people, that a person with such an issue can come up with such a notion, or come up with such a piece of art or some craft or anything. So they are in no way less than us, and we need to accept this the fact.
I think we just need to view the disabled community as valuable consumers, and we need to employ more people with disabilities, understanding that they are ambitious, and they would work hard as much as an average person, and to integrate disability history also in our school curriculum, so that children from a very young age learn to be tolerant, to be more accepting, instead of making fun or calling names, because surely they learn it from their adults in the house. If their parents use a certain kind of language around mental health, then the children are going to learn that language. But if the parents teach their children to be more accepting, more tolerant, forgiving, then I think the entire community, entire society will be transformed when it comes to perceiving people who are different to us.
Exactly, that you said it quite correctly, and I think you just overall you covered all the points, because that is how the change will come.
Yeah.
That the attitude needs to change, the attitude, and that how willing people are to embrace someone or to accept someone that is a bit different from them, and the partnerships that needs to be made, or the barriers that needs to be changed into bridges, rather than aloofing them, or rather than isolating them. They should be more inviting, and they should be more welcoming, and not just in a mocking way, but warmly welcoming the individuals to their societal gatherings, or even if they are mainstream schools. So it is quite beneficial, for the children as well, if from a younger age they'll be given awareness and they'll be given exposure to such schools. Like there's a culture of taking the children out on a field trip or an extracurricular activity. So why not have a carnival, or why not have an activity session with the specially able children, in which they interact with certain individuals that are with certain children even that are a little more special, or they require a little more attention to them as a mainstream one. Or they could go to their schools, they could have a sports event, in a collaboration between the mainstream and the inclusive society. So I think that will decrease the barriers. And what happens is that the people don't know how to approach a certain individual. So I think that ethically and morally they should be taught on how to address such individuals, on how to communicate with such individuals, whether verbally or non-verbally, and how to communicate easily without demeaning those individuals, without insulting those individuals, and without being proud of what you have and they don't. I think that is more important, because even when we talk with such individuals, so we are like that, Alhamdulillah, Allah has bestowed us with His blessings. Alhamdulillah, we don't have any such condition, or Alhamdulillah, we don't have any such child in our family. So I think that is also quite insulting and heartbreaking for those individuals and their parents when they see their child being pointed out, or their family member being labeled as someone, God forbid, some sinful person, or some person that has asked for that disability. See, no one asks for a disability. Everyone wants to be normal. No one would want their child to be special. No one would want themselves to be special. So I think they do not have any part in being what they are, and they already know that they are a bit different. So it's not us that need to point out that you are different, or you cannot do this thing in this particular manner in which I do. So I think that needs to be more
And I
catered.
think media plays a vital role when it comes to the Indian subcontinent. We know that these programs that are regularly shown on TV and how the entire nation watches them regularly, I think media plays a really, really important role. And I think they should encourage people with certain disabilities to work as actors in certain programs, so that it becomes more normalized, more common, and people's perception starts to change by watching these individuals and what they're capable of. And like you mentioned, that there are so many people across the globe who have some condition, mental health or physical, and they are so creative and talented at the same time, more talented and creative than an average person. So we just need to showcase their work and give them a platform to showcase their talent and skills, inshallah. Umm-e-Laila, time's up. Thank you so much, Jazakumullah khairan, for this insightful conversation.
Jazakallah for having me. And it's always pleasure to talk to you and I didn't even look at the clock, so the time passes when you're having a good discussion. So Alhamdulillah, it was very nice. So the discussion was very nice, and thank you for having me. Jazakallah.
To all our viewers who joined us today and watched Umm-e-Laila and listened to her conversation on the topic of disability, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please leave your comments on our Hidayat TV's Facebook page or YouTube channel. And if you have any questions that you would like to ask Umm-e-Laila, please call our studio number and leave your details, and inshallah we will get back to you. We'll see you next Saturday with another guest and another topic. Till then, look after your mental health. Assalamu alaikum.